Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Numbers chapter 11. When we last left the Israelites, they were departing from Sinai at God's command, and they were following His cloud, the presence of His glory, careful to obey everything He had instructed them to do. And so it looks like this covenant is being fulfilled. It looks like God living among and leading His people, and He's bringing them into the place that He has promised for them. But as happens so often, we as humans forget what God has done for us whenever things get hard. We neglect God's instruction. We're tempted to indulge in sin. And we sometimes even begin to believe that God is working against us, like He wants to keep us down. God has a lot to say whenever people disobey Him in this way. And it's important for us as Christ followers to learn from the mistakes of ancient Israel so that we don't end up repeating them. Now the people became like those who complain of adversity in the hearing of the Lord. And when the Lord heard it, His anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp. The people therefore cried out to Moses, and Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire died out. So the name of that place was called Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burned among them. As the people continue traveling through the wilderness, they begin complaining. But they aren't just venting or griping. It says that they're complaining like those who complain of adversity. This word that's translated adversity is ra in Hebrew. And most of the time, whenever it appears in the Bible, it's translated as bad or evil or wickedness. In their complaining, the people are accusing God and accusing Moses of being unfair and unjust. They're accusing them of being evil. They're following God, their creator, the one who rescued them from slavery to Pharaoh, and yet they're accusing Him of being another Pharaoh. And now you can understand why this would be upsetting to God after everything He's done for the people. He has the power and He has the authority to wipe them all out then and there. But remember how Exodus 34 said that even though He will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, He's also a God who is slow to anger. And so God warns the people through showing His power. He does this by sending wildfires that begin to break out on the outskirts of the camp. Luckily, the people realize their mistakes and they turn to Moses, who in turn prays, and the fires are put out. There we see that Moses is repenting on behalf of the people, and God spares them. Of course, that brings to mind Moses' intercession after the golden calf in Exodus 32 and 33. To mark this event, the people name the place Taberah, which means burning. And you would think that this would shake the people out of their complaining, that they would realize the error of their ways. It should remind them that even though trekking through the wilderness is tough and hard, it's better than all the evils of Egyptian slavery, not to say anything about the amazing promises that God has in store for them. The rabble who were among them had greedy desires. And also the sons of Israel wept again and said, "Who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish we used to eat free in Egypt, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our appetite is gone. There's nothing at all to look at except this manna." Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance like that of bdellium. The people would go about and gather it and grind it between two millstones, or beat it in the mortar, and boil it in the pot and make cakes with it, and its taste was as the taste of cakes baked with oil. When the dew fell on the camp at night, the manna would fall with it. And so we see that there are still some in the congregation who do not see what God is doing. They are unsatisfied with the miracle bread that falls out of the sky every morning. They would rather return to Egypt with all its slavery and its oppression and its torture, just to have a little bit more variety on their plates. Now remember too that those melons and those leeks and garlic and onions that the people are raving about were also grown by other slaves, whereas God is providing the manna all by Himself. These people in the camp that are complaining would rather overlook the suffering of other people so that they can enjoy the creature comforts that they're used to, instead of solely depending on God to provide what He said He would provide. On top of that, Remember the importance of the manna in Exodus 16 and how it went bad after one day. And so that forced the Israelites to stay dependent on God, to stay trusting Him. They couldn't get greedy and they couldn't abuse the system because they couldn't store the manna for the future. They could only gather what they would eat for that day. Now, in contrast, these people that are missing Egypt are called greedy in the text. Literally in Hebrew, they had a desire to desire. They weren't satisfied with God giving them what they needed. They wanted more, even if it meant the oppression and the degradation of themselves and other people. Now, hopefully you're hearing echoes from Genesis 3. The people literally want forbidden fruits that reject the human call to be images of God, to depend on Him and obey His will. Now Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, each man at the doorway of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly, and Moses was displeased. So Moses said to the Lord, "Why have you been so hard on your servant? And why have I not found favor in your sight? And you have laid the burden of all this people on me. Was it I who conceived all this people? Was it I who brought them forth, that you should say to me, 'Carry them in your bosom, as a nurse carries a nursing infant, to the land which you swore to their fathers?' Where am I to get meat to give to all this people? For they weep before me, saying, 'Give us meat that we may eat.' I alone am not able to carry all this people, because it is too burdensome for me. So if you're going to deal thus with me, please kill me at once, if I have found favor in your sight, and do not let me see my wretchedness." All of this complaining really gets to Moses, and he breaks down in front of God. This is Moses we're talking about, right? A year ago, he was pronouncing plagues on Egypt and splitting the Red Sea and inspiring hope in all the people. He climbed Mount Sinai and he spoke to God like a friend. He saw the backside of God's holiness and glory. He begged God to take his life instead of destroying Israel after the golden calf. And he repented on their behalf just earlier in this chapter. And now, he sounds like Moses from Exodus 3 and 4, rejecting his call to lead the people. He says, he isn't their mother. Why should he have to be put in charge? It represents how leadership can often be painful and lonely. Moses feels responsible for all the people's complaining, but there's really nothing he can do to fix it. Moses says, "God, if this is how it's going to be, it's better off if you just killed me." But even when it's so dark that we can't see a way through, God still has a plan. The Lord therefore said to Moses, "Gather for me 70 men from the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and their officers, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them take their stand there with you. Then I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take of the Spirit who is upon you, and will put him upon them. And they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you will not bear it all alone." God instructs Moses to take 70 elders from the camp who will be able to lead with Moses. It reminds us of the 70 elders from Exodus 24 who were invited to see God's glory on Mount Sinai from a distance. And it's also symbolic of Jacob's 70 descendants that first moved down to Egypt in Genesis 46. They will now share the burden of caring for the people alongside Moses, very similar to the judges from Exodus 18. And this phrase, bearing each other's burdens, it's one Paul is going to reuse and adapt in Galatians 6 to talk about the Christian life. Even today, we can't do it alone. And God says he's going to fill these 70 elders with his Holy Spirit, just as he has done to Moses. They're going to be able to see things how God sees them. They're going to be able to know his will and speak on his behalf. They're going to be united with God in a way that resembles a new redeemed creation, the one that this current creation was always intended to be. Say to the people, "Consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, 'Oh, that someone would give us meat to eat, for we were well off in Egypt.' Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat not 1 day, not 2 days, not 5 days, not 10 days, nor 20 days, but a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, 'Why did we ever leave Egypt?' But Moses said, The people, among whom I am, are 600,000 on foot. Yet you have said, I will give them meat so that they may eat for a whole month. Should flocks and herds be slaughtered for them to be sufficient for them? Or should all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to be sufficient for them? The Lord said to Moses, Is the Lord's power limited? Now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not. As for the people complaining that they have no meat, God says, just get ready. He's about to give them so much meat that it's going to be coming out of their nose. He's going to give them so much meat that they're going to be as tired of it as they are of the manna right now. And unlike the manna, it will be the amount they need not just for a day, but for an entire month, all at one time. Of course, that's when Moses starts doing the math, right? A month worth of meat for 600,000 people. What, do they need to start slaughtering their flocks? They need to start catching all the fish in the sea? But God maintains that He is powerful enough to do what He says He's going to do. And when we've seen His faithfulness time after time, when we've seen all the plagues in Egypt and the Red Sea splitting, why should we doubt that? So Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord. Also, he gathered 70 men of the elders of the people and stationed them around the tent. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him. And he took up the Spirit who was upon him and placed him upon the 70 elders. And when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied, but they did not do it again. But 2 men had remained in the camp. The name of one was Eldad, and the name of the other Medad. And the Spirit rested upon them. Now they were among those who had been registered, but had not gone out to the tent. And they prophesied in the camp. So a young man ran and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Then Joshua, the son of Nun, the attendant of Moses from his youth, said, Moses, my Lord, restrain them. But Moses said to him, Are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put His Spirit upon them. And then Moses returned to the camp, both he and the elders of Israel. First, Moses recruits his 70 elders, and the Spirit of God is placed inside each one of them, and they begin prophesying. In the Bible, prophesying doesn't necessarily mean telling the future as much as it does speaking on God's behalf. The elders are giving instruction and claiming it's on God's authority, just like Moses has been doing. Now there are 2 guys, Eldad and Medad, who for some reason were a part of the 70 elders, but couldn't make it to the tabernacle that day. And even still, all the way out in the camp, furthest from the tabernacle of God's presence, the Spirit falls on them, and they begin prophesying too. Now some of the people, including Moses' attendant Joshua, get concerned. They think they're trying to replace or even overthrow Moses. But Moses says he wishes all of God's people were filled with His Spirit, and then they wouldn't be complaining about anything. They would all be working together to accomplish God's will. This concept of all the people being filled with His Spirit is foundational for our faith, because we recognize that this becomes a prophecy that was fulfilled through the work of Christ. Because of Jesus, God's Holy Spirit fills the hearts of all those who follow Him. We can become united with God. We can know His will. We can become new creations. But to do so, to use language from Galatians 5, we have to walk by the Spirit. Or to use language from John 15, we have to abide in Jesus and abide in His love. Now there went forth a wind from the Lord, and it brought quail from the sea, and let them fall beside the camp, about a day's journey on this side, and a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp, and about 2 cubits deep on the surface of the ground. The people spent all day and all night and all the next day, and gathered the quail. He who gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. Meanwhile, God's other promise from this chapter comes true as well. Back in Exodus, the first night before the manna arrived, God provided quail too. But this time, it's a little bit different. Piles of quail are falling out of the sky and surrounding the camp for miles on all sides. They fall in heaps that are 3 feet deep, and it's enough for each person to gather 10 homers worth. That's 10 donkey loads. You can compare that to 1 omer of manna a day from Exodus 16. That's about 1/10 of 1 basket. Basically, they're bringing in 1,000 times as much quail as they would be manna. So they've got quail coming out of their noses for sure. But it's not a blessing. Remember Leviticus 11's instructions to stay away from the carcasses of dead animals. God is using this as a test to see who will trust him and obey his instruction, and who will be so greedy that they try to hoard this unclean meat. While the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very severe plague. So the name of that place was called Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who had been greedy. From Kibroth Hattaavah, the people set out for Hazeroth, and they remained at Hazeroth. A plague breaks out among all the people who eat the quail, and they die. They bury so many people there that they name the place Kibroth Hattaavah, which means graves of the greedy. And from there they depart. But will they continue to complain against God? Now, it's easy to rebuke the Israelites here, but how many times do we do the same thing? We have promises from God that he will provide what we need, whether that's necessities like food and water and shelter, or whether that's people who will come alongside us and bear our burdens with us. And yet we don't trust that he will provide, even when we know concrete ways that he has provided for us in the past. We complain and we gripe, and sometimes we even think that God is out to get us. We start to doubt his goodness. We believe that he just wants to lord over us and make us submissive to his will, that he's keeping something from us. And that is when we do exactly what the Israelites did. That's when we do exactly what the serpent got Eve to do. We disobey, we rebel, we think we know what's best, and it gets us killed. In contrast to all of this, we are to not believe the lies of the enemy. We're called to abide in Jesus and walk by God's Holy Spirit. We're called to live in a community of Christ followers that bears each other's burdens, just as Jesus did for us. In doing that, believing and following Jesus, that is where we find eternal, abundant life. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope you have a good day, and God bless.